we are now thrilled to be joined by a very special guest. His name is Caleb Durbin of the New York Yankees. Caleb, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me.
Now, there are many prospects and Yankees players. None of them mean as much to me personally as Mr. Caleb Durbin, who has 438 more career plate appearances for the Washington University Bears than I do, because I had one baby struck out looking. It was a ball. Caleb Durbin, Division III icon, the pride of every mediocre baseball player with big dreams. I am thrilled to have you here, and I have a million questions for you. But what I think I want to begin with, for people who are maybe not familiar with you, explain to a casual person why you going from a Division III small school to now the cusp of the major leagues being added to the Yankees 40-man earlier this week. Why is that journey abnormal?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think many people are tapped into D3 baseball as you guys are, especially media in the big leagues now. But it's definitely wild. I mean, you go from, my junior year was the year right after COVID, so you're not playing in front of anyone, right? Even Division I programs, I think they're probably playing in front of a lot of fans that following year. We're wearing masks on the field, not playing in front of anyone. And then you're kind of going from that. And then 4 years later, you're trying to play in front of 50,000 people in the Bronx. So that in itself is obviously a pretty big difference. But just as far as the exposure goes to even get an opportunity, a little bit about like how that even came about. I was obviously drafted by the Braves, and I remember the Brave Scout came to a game in the middle of nowhere in DePaul, Indiana. And it was one of our later games in the year, and I think I hit for the cycle. I had the best game I had ever played in my life. And of course, like the Braves, that was the one game the Brave Scout went to. And obviously I had pretty good relationship with him, talking on the phone and stuff, and then put together a pretty good game for him to try to convince everyone else with the Braves to pick me up. But yeah, it's definitely a big difference. And I mean, not a whole lot of people take that path.
So I am going to use that incredible reference to Greencastle, Indiana, as an opportunity to ask about one of the big parts of why you have gotten to where you are, because it's not just, and I know you've been asked about this before, but the fact that you mentioned that DePaul series is notable. One of the skills that Caleb Durbin has that stands out in any context and that has carried over is that you do not strike out. And I bring that up because the funny thing is the game after your cycle against DePaul was your first strikeout of the season as a senior. And that was not until the beginning of May. And so this is the skill that has kind of carried over. And of course, playing multiple positions in the infield. But when you're talking about hoping that a skill translate from a lower level of college baseball to the professional ranks, that's one that I think you can imagine teams tapping into, but it's not a guarantee. So I want to talk about that skill, that contact skill. When was that a thing where you're like, oh, I am good at avoiding this thing that is bad in baseball? When did that contact ability become something you were like, oh, this is something that I can do better than my friends that are also playing baseball?
Yeah, I think I've always had that just kind of ability to put the ball in play. Just my philosophy, like, as a T-ball player, was really just you can't score runs if you don't, or you can't get on base if you don't put the ball in play, and you can't, score runs if you don't get on base. So that was just, I thought it was just a natural part of the game. I think through just all the reps with my dad in the batting cage after school, it just got better and better at it. And it's funny because I was, even in Division III, I was never an All-American. I don't even think I was all region my junior year, the year I got drafted. So obviously there's other dudes putting up crazy numbers at the Division III level better than me. But again, it was kind of that only striking out 2 times that year to, slugging pretty good. And then obviously walking at a pretty high clip, that they saw that combination of okay, maybe this has a chance to, play at the next level. And even so, I don't think they expected me to, it to play at the level that it's been playing at. So it wasn't really until the Yankees traded for me and told me it was the first time a, professional organization, the coaches in there were like, dude, this is a legitimate elite tool that you have that's like big league ready right now, if you can sustain it. And if we could get these other tools to kind of get to average or above average, you can be a big league player. And that was the first time where I was really told, felt like that I could, that tool can carry me, quite a ways.
So I want to ask about when it became not clear to you or possible to you that you could be a professional baseball player as your career. Because, I was at a wedding last weekend with all of the dummies that I played with at WashU. None of us, when we showed up, had anything resembling professional aspirations. Now, one guy in my class got some looks from the Astros, went to a couple camps, but when he shows up on campus, he's there to play baseball in a fulfilling manner and get a good education. You are now going to play for the New York Yankees. At what point from committing to go to a Division III school to right now did it almost teeter for you where it was like, this can be my job, this can be my life?
Yeah, I think I've always had, even in high school, I've had kind of a delusional optimism about my own abilities. I think I've always probably thought I was better than I really was.
Yeah.
I put up good numbers in high school. I started as a sophomore at shortstop and leadoff hitter, so I was always playing on good travel teams. So, but also I didn't realize that I lacked, the power tool. I lacked these tools and projectability that really kind of takes you to, playing at a Power 5 school and stuff like that. So like Stanford was my dream school. I wanted to go to Stanford and play for 3 years and get drafted. Like that was my dream. Or an Ivy League school, at least. But obviously once that didn't play out and I ended up at WashU, I understood that, okay, if I do want to play at the next level and play pro ball, definitely going to have to play in some good summer leagues now, from a realistic standpoint, like what am I actually going to have to do? Because obviously I understood the odds were kind of stacked against me. Just from an exposure standpoint, not going to get a whole lot of scouts in DePaul. Luckily there was one there, but
Oh man.
so I ended up playing more wood bat summer league games, in the South Florida League and in the Northwoods League than I even did playing for WashU. And I think that definitely helps a lot. Definitely helped with my development. I know that for a fact, but also from an exposure standpoint, I think it played a big role. Going into WashU, I knew Coach Bloom had those connections to those Wisconsin Northwoods League teams just from being at Stevens Point. So there's other things that kind of went into my confidence in my, in the dream that I could play pro ball. I felt like it could be a realistic thing heading into WashU. And I just needed a little belief and a little confidence in that for me to take it and run with it.
Because like if I'm a junior at any Division III program and a freshman shows up thinking he's going to play professional baseball, like that kid's an idiot, right? That kid's an idiot. He's an idiot because that's just not, the odds are outrageous.
It's not why you're there.
So
it's not why you're there.
That's not why, like, hey, Caleb, great to have you. Hope you're good. But like, we're all here to get a good education and drink some beers and, be good at baseball within this specific context. And I think what you talked about, and I know it's probably weird to look at this about yourself, right? But like, you never didn't believe, like you just, in your mind, you always thought you were good enough and you had to be irrational. Every good Major League Baseball player has to have, or athlete at all, has to have a level of irrational self-belief. And if you don't, you're doing something else. You're wearing a suit. You're sitting behind a computer like us idiots, right? And to hear you talk about it, it's not like you got to a point where it changed. It was in you the whole time, right? Like you didn't have to necessarily learn that.
Yeah, I think I've always had it. I've always been competitive growing up, and if I, to your point, like if I had that same mindset that everyone else around me at the time had, yeah, I wouldn't be here. So you have to, and they were probably more realistic in their expectations of me than at the time. But again, to even have a shot, I had to think that way, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
At least that was my thought process back then. It's funny though because I remember I didn't talk about it a whole lot. Obviously, Coach Bloom, he knew that I had a pro ball aspirations and whatnot, but I'd be walking. I remember one time I was maybe after practice walking to the cafeteria, and Jake, you know these people, but I was talking with Matt Ashball, and I told him, like, I don't forget how it came up, but he's one of my teammates at the time, and I think I was a sophomore, he was a junior, and I said, yeah, I think I could get drafted next year. I think we were probably just messing around, but obviously I was kind of serious about it. And he just laughed. He just chuckled like, yeah, right. And now I'll give him credit. He's one of my biggest supporters. Now he's followed my journey all throughout. He was probably joking at the time too, but it is things like that. Like it's not something I talk about a lot. It's just something I believed
Yeah.
inside that I could do. And I went about it quietly. I just went to work every day and um, obviously wanted to win a World Series too. So I was around my teammates all the time. And I lived baseball and went to class and, that was about it.
Because I think this is something that maybe people don't understand about smaller level school baseball is even though it matters to nobody outside of that context, it matters the same or similar when you're in it. And so it's not like you were around people who didn't care about getting better. It's just that the end goal there is a different thing. Again, shouts out to Matt Ashbaugh. I would have laughed at you too, because when you are at a D3 school, the energy is don't quit your day job, right? Like that's the whole thing. And so it is very impressive the way that you seem to have gone about it. And I'll just speak to, Coach Bloom, who we both played for. He knew. I remember getting texts from him when you showed up on campus in 2019, and Coach Bloom, who has had other big leaguers, JP Fireeisen, Jordan Zimmerman, he knew. He was like, this kid is different. He is starting at shortstop as a freshman. There is no doubt. And at that moment, it was kind of clear to all the alumni that like Caleb had a little bit something different. Now, this is moving forward to my next question. You get drafted by the Braves, and you get drafted because you can play infield and you got wheels and you don't strike out. It was probably clear to you pretty early on that your path to becoming a Major League Baseball player was to develop power, more power than you had shown in college. Now, part of that is because it's impossible to hit at our home field, which is why I had a low ERA. Shouts out to Pitchers Park. Once you made that realization that I need to develop more power, what has that process been to this point now where your power is, good? Like you're not Aaron Judge. We both know that. But like your power is going to be playable at the major league level. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, I think obviously there's some swing changes that go on with that. You get away with a lot more facing 85 in D3 than you do against 95 in pro ball. So I think that rookie ball year only had one extra base hit in 18 games. So right away I knew I had to make some adjustments there. There's more swing adjustments that offseason than anything that kind of helps me get a little more slug that next year. But it really wasn't until I got to the Yankees where they basically, they went through swing decisions, swing and miss and contact quality, those three things. And basically I was able to change my mindset to, okay, I'm confident I'm not going to swing and miss. Like that's, I don't have to worry about that anymore. So I'm fine swinging, missing more and striking out more if it's going to mean I have a better approach at the plate. I'm trying to do more damage because was the biggest thing for me. I think I was cheating myself and trying to put the ball in play when I didn't have to do that. I had to think, do damage, pull the ball in the air, whatever I had to think to get better results in my batted ball, I had to do. And I didn't have a choice, like you said. Like the swing and miss is great, but that alone wasn't going to do the job. I had to get better at the other areas of my game. And it's still a work in progress. Like I'm still trying to, obviously, I want, I want there to be no weaknesses in my games. Obviously still trying to work on that. But that was the biggest thing. I think that mindset of don't cheat myself. Like don't worry about putting the ball in play, worry about doing damage and hitting the ball hard. And that alone, I think was a pretty significant, um, change in results, was just that approach at the plate.
Because also when you're playing D3, if you put the ball in play, you're probably gonna be safe. Just because
Mhm.
defenses are worse and you're fast enough, you are incentivized to not drive the ball in a weird way. Whereas in pro ball, the margins are so much smaller that you really do need to make dynamic contact more regularly. Jordan, what were you going to ask?
Well, I was just going to say, and it's not like you forget how to, put the ball in play. You still ended up walking more than you struck out. Like, it's not like those skills evaporated. You're just giving yourselves more opportunity to impact the baseball in a real way. I want to get back to something you said earlier, though, because it's clear you've had that self-belief for a long time. You did also say that it wasn't really until the Yankees traded for you that it was like, oh, wait a minute, like this big league dream is not just realistic, but like very much within reach if I can make these adjustments. And I gotta say, if anyone is gonna, see the value in a Caleb Durbin, it's Brian Cashman, who he himself was an undersized Division III infielder. So Brian Cashman, he knows a little something. He can appreciate your journey as much as anybody else. But you've of course made it much farther in professional baseball than he ever did as a player. As far as joining the Yankees, it's not like the Braves are some irrelevant team that people aren't talking about. But I'm curious, especially in the second half of the season and then in the fall league, what has it been like as playing for the team that everybody talks about more than anybody else? Like, I don't know if you had any associated. I know you grew up in Chicago. I don't know if you were a fan of any specific team, but people, especially prospects, Yankees prospects get talked about just the same way the Yankees players get talked about more than anybody else. Yankees prospects get talked about more than anybody else. So what has that experience been like playing for the team? Even when you are in Somerset or Tampa or Scranton, like people are paying attention, or the fall league, like people are paying attention. What has it been like then seeing very prominent people that are not just us dorks with a podcast about Division III baseball, right? I mean, I thought that someday we'd have you on our D3 podcast, not on this one. And now here we are, right? So what has that been like having a lot more attention on you, especially this past season with the Yankees?
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. I feel like I'm pretty spoiled in that way, just because, I mean, Scranton is a little bit out there. We don't pull too many fans, but Somerset was, we get packs almost every night. So the fans are pretty incredible. I can't imagine how they are at the big league level, but even at the minor league level, it's pretty amazing. But yeah, it's, again, going from that D3 scenery to now you have actually a lot of people following you and watching you and caring about what you're doing.
Right.
I mean, it's what you want as a player.
Sure.
It's what you work for. And I mean, people say pressure is a privilege, but having that background of kind of where I came from at Wash U and not having that and kind of just doing the same thing, like grinding the same way, but no one even caring. It kind of takes all the pressure out of it now. It's because I realize how much of, how long of a road it's been. And, I mean, obviously you want your work to be noticed. So, it's pretty incredible.
Whereas, to compare it to say like Spencer Jones, who was a first round pick out of Vanderbilt and a big prospect, or Anthony Volpe, who Major League Scouts knew about when he was like 12, those guys, their whole time, obviously their motivation comes from the internal as well. But there are all these other external factors that have always been around for them. Whereas for you, there was a point where no one on the planet but you and your dad and like your college coach gave a crap about how good you were going to be. And so I would imagine that at that point, you have to motivate yourself. Like you're getting yourself out of bed to lift, right? There's no one else that's doing it for you. How has that experience been? Do you still feel like you're the person driving that bus now? Or is it, that if you show up next year and you suck, that there's 50,000 people who you've never met in your life who are going to be booing you? Like, how do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I think that inner motivation, it's always going to be there. I think one, it's been that way for so long that I can't imagine it not ever being there. With that, my expectations for myself have, because of that, have always been greater than anyone else's expectations for me. So I can't imagine playing in Yankee Stadium and I have a poor performance or something. And these are the things you kind of have to think about is, um, like my standard for myself, my expectation is never going to be less than what anyone else. So no one's ever going to have higher expectations than me. So I'm going to feel
Yeah.
some type of way about myself because that comes from the inside, not because anyone else is upset at me,
Yeah.
or booing me, or you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
come from the inside my entire life, and that's going to it's going to be like that the rest of my life probably.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like I think about this sometimes, like being at Yankee Stadium all the time, guy in the Yankees strikes out, crowd boos. It's like he's booing himself
Yeah, exactly.
in his brain, right? And
he doesn't need Frankie in section 215 to tell you that wasn't good
Right.
enough.
Now, there is a part of that experience that is
Mhm.
unique and has over time, I have seen that pressure eat people, and I have also seen it propel people, right? And so I think that your thought process of your own expectations being larger and have always been larger than what anybody else has for you because of your unique path, that does seem particularly well suited for the cauldron you're about to step into. Jordan, you have a question?
My final question for you, Caleb, is also kind of Yankees adjacent. Just now that you've spent a couple of years with them, I know you were in big league camp. Are there any guys that you've gotten to know that, obviously Yankees fans listening to this are very familiar with? This isn't me being like, oh, surely you're going and hanging out with Aaron Judge every day. But since you've been in the Yankees organization, are there other players, maybe some that haven't made the big leagues yet, that you've kind of become tight with and are excited to maybe be teammates with sometime soon?
Yeah, I think one of the best parts about as you get to the upper levels of the minor leagues is the guys you're playing with start to get the call and start to make an impact on that roster, which is unbelievably cool to see from from the outside. I mean, Austin Wells is a guy that I've gotten a chance to play with quite a bit last year before he got called up, and got super close with him. So seeing his success, rookie of the year finalist, that's been, really cool for me to see. And then Ben Rice is another
Mhm.
dude that I've had the chance to play with a lot. He's been an unbelievable hitter, as long as I've known him with the Yankees. So, yeah, had to have those relationships outside of the field. I mean, you guys have been around baseball and played baseball long enough that, that those relationships outside of the field is what kind of makes it so cool to play at that level with them, So, those are two dudes that probably two of my closest friends in the organization. Then obviously getting the chance to talk with Judge a little bit, he's unbelievable captain. But yeah, a bunch of the other guys too. But those guys are guys that I actually have relationships, outside of the field with.
Because when you get traded to the Yankees and like they're winning or losing games at the big league level, like obviously you want the team to do well, but you're not invested in the same way. And then when you have relationships with these people, I mean, we have it, with people that not that we've played with, but that we know, that we root for, that we care about. Like I can imagine for you flipping on the television this October and watching like your friend Austin Wells like
Right.
go yard in Cleveland, like it elevates the experience. And I can imagine for you watching the Yankees in the postseason this year, did you have FOMO? Were you like, God, like I need that, like I want that?
Yeah, it was tough too because I was playing in the fall league, so I was trying to focus on that.
Right.
But deep down, everyone, like, I knew where I wanted to be.
Right.
But yeah, I think a big part of that too is like seeing Wellesley and Rice do their thing this year. So in my head, it's like I was just playing with those guys,
Yeah.
competing with them a couple months ago, and now they're doing it at the highest level. So it just builds to that confidence of like, man, I can do this. Like I was just playing with those guys who are now playing at the highest level. I can also play at the highest level, So you take those little victories of other people, and you just build on them yourself.
I have one final question, then we're going to let you go. It's only right. We have to do this. When did you meet Jake for the first time, and what were you thinking? Like, man, what's this guy's deal?
So,
Because I know when Jake started telling me, like, man, I heard about this Durbin kid. He sounds really good, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Excited to see how good he is. But I'm sure there was another side to that story. So, as a WashU kid coming in, and you hear about this Jake guy, he's got a lot of followers on whatever this social media website is called. So, what was your early experience with Jake? We got to ask.
I mean, I obviously first heard about Jake my freshman year when, all the upperclassmen were talking about him. And I think it was one of your guys' podcasts. One of my teammates, it was probably Matt Ashball. He's always tapped into your guys' stuff. And he was like, yeah, you're getting some buzz around D3. I'm like, buzz? Who is talking about Division III baseball? And he's like, no, it's Jake Mincer. Like, he was in the All-American for us. I'm like, what? And then I went on it, and you guys were like, yeah, my sources say Caleb Durbin's a pretty good ball player. And that's the first time anyone's ever talked about
that's
me.
Right.
And it was
that's
you guys.
Right. That's right. Hey, and that's why we're here today. That's why this is really just a way to give ourselves compliments, right? Because truly, this year, Durbin, look what he's doing with the fall league. Got to get him on these spots. No. Who was first? It was us.
I went to St. Louis in April of 2019 to just be around and see people watch the team play. And so that was the first time I saw you in person, definitely the first time I met you in person. And, any freshmen starting at shortstop for any college baseball team, like, they don't suck, right? And so I think that for me was the first time I met you. And then going out to watch you guys play in the D3 World Series, driving from here in New York to Iowa like a nut, like getting to watch you in that atmosphere was so cool. And like, not to be the sappy guy here, but like, when you have someone who not that you even play this, but like has been through those same points in life as you and understands those things, it's amazing to watch and to follow. And like, it heightens the experience of watching baseball, because there's 700 Caleb Durbins, right? There are 750 big leaguers, and every single one of those people has people who are involved or adjacent to the journey. And I consider myself fortunate to be 0.0000001% of you climbing that ladder at all, right? Of being able to witness it. And I consider myself very lucky. And that's something that I hope that you from time to time have the ability to kind of reflect on, that yes, your motivation is for you, but even when no one cared, people cared, right? And I think that is true about every single ball player.
Caleb Durbin, we are so excited for you, and really appreciative of your time, and we're just wishing the best for you, man. So thanks so much for coming on, dude.
Yeah, no, thank you guys. I'm glad this could kind of come full circle a little bit.